water will blow out, clear itself out. You're going to get a leak alarm because I opened a hole in the system, but I didn't have to touch the baby to clear that out. I didn't have to disconnect the interface. As soon as I plug that up, the leak alarm is going to go away and I could go back here and then reset the visual alarm.
Is it possible for the water to get into the small part of the pressure tube?
Up here?
Yeah.
It'd be pretty hard because it's a big chamber.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it doesn't tend to jump.
Okay.
It's rare. I've actually never seen it get into there to the point we've actually needed that yet.
Yeah.
The old system, the version it did.
Right.
Okay. So we're ready to deliver gas. I would hit the check mark. You can see it because I dialed the knob before. Normally that wouldn't have happened, but I dialed the knob while it was sitting there. So, don't like the idea of doing that without the AC power because that.
Oh,
It just alerted me to it. I'm in the middle of things.
This is the part where you put your baby on the hospital floor.
Yep.
yeah.
So, anyhow. And so this is what when you're demoing it, I don't like leaving it on the baby. It's really hard to keep an adequate pressure because these hard faces, there's nowhere, like that's hot melt glue behind just trying to plug it up. So when you have a baby doll, I usually do the demo and then I say, for demo purpose, I'm gonna take this off. I'm just gonna hold these cannula over here because
Okay.
this is a very non-compliant baby.
Okay.
But anyhow, you can see right now it tells me we're in flow mode. I'm delivering 6 liters per minute of flow. My FiO2 is set at 21%. Well, I would have cleared that. When it started up, we gave you 2 minutes of pre-silenced alarm. So you probably did get a leak or something like that. As long as there's no audible alarm at the end of 22 minutes, you can just hit the reset key to clear the visual alarms. So that's the way the system works. Audible alarms automatically terminate as soon as the condition is fixed. The visual indication, which is a red bar up here, usually red of whatever the parameter was, and a message, such as a leak or a low pressure alarm, will stay there until you clear it with the alarm reset key. So going through the display, I'm set at 21%. That's the measured value for FiO2. Here's what's nice about NeoPap. I'm in flow mode, 6 liters a minute. I can tell you I'm generating 6 centimeters of water at the baby's nose. If you have a vapotherm system or some other, you don't know what that pressure is. You just know you've given flow. And so I'll do something like, and you can see how it responds to the baby's breathing. So I'll do something to manipulate the interface to make that bar graph do something. So you can see how that works. Stop and find out if there's any questions about turning it on. So let's look at the controls. So I want to adjust FiO2. We're at 21%. I need to go up to 30. Simply grab the knob. It'll realize I want to change. I dial until I see 30%. NeoPap always tells me what to do. It says press the check mark to save it. It's blinking. So if I press the check mark, it's 30%. And in a few seconds, you're going to see this display start to respond as the FiO2 increases. It's a little bit slower than the controls because it's a sensor. So that's going to come up to 30%. Let's say I want to change the flow rate. We're at 6 liters a minute. I'm weaning the baby down. I want to go down to 4. Same thing. I just grab the knob, start turning. It's going to realize I want to change that. It's going to jump to wherever position the knob was, but you just dial it till you get the setting that you want. So I'm down to 4. Again, check mark to save. That's what you always want to remember. It's action, then confirm it with a check mark. So now I'm delivering 4 liters a minute. You can see I have lower flow, so I have lower pressure going to the baby. Now I'm only down to 3 centimeters of water. And then I go from here. I say, you remember I told you we can do CPAP or flow without touching the baby, without changing the interface. To simply do that, I press the up arrow. It tells me I'm in flow mode. It instructs me on my next step. Press the check mark if you want to change that. Then it comes up with another screen. It says either use the up or down arrows to change the mode. So I'll push the down arrow. Now it says I'm in CPAP, and like anything else, I save it. Now I'm delivering 4 centimeters of CPAP at 30% FiO2, so the FiO2 is the same. The CPAP pressure is the last pressure that was used by the unit, last setting that it was at. So in this case, it was 4 centimeters of water. So now I'm delivering 4 centimeters. You can see I measure 4. Same thing, if I breathe, make the baby breathe. You can, however you want to do that. But I get the measured pressure. Same thing if I need to change that CPAP pressure. I just start dialing that same knob. It'll realize what I'm wanting to do. I'd say I want to go up to 6. It will go up to 6.
Okay.
You see the display changed. So that's your basic control of therapy for the baby while you're using it. Okay. Let's say you're needing to take the interface temporarily off the baby. We could put it in standby mode right from here, so you can do some type of procedure. Maybe you need to move the baby to go do an x-ray and you're going to use a different piece of equipment wherever the baby's at for x-ray. To put it in standby mode, I just press the power button. It comes up and it's got a little caret pointing to standby. So again, it tells me check mark to proceed, so I want to go into standby mode. So now unit's turned off, but it's preserved the settings for you. You can see it's going to tell you to exit standby mode, just press the power key. So whenever you're ready, you come back, put the interface back on the baby, and press the power button, and it comes right back to where we were last set.
Okay.
Likewise, if you're in standby mode, so we'll put it in standby mode by hitting that power button, check. If you're gone long enough, it's going to actually display those previous settings, 6 centimeters of water, 30% FiO2. However, if when you come back, you know that you want to start with a different pressure, you can change pressure in standby mode. When you dial that, it will bring the adjustment screen up. Same thing with FiO2. I could change it if I need a new number, new therapy setting. Now when I come out, it'll come out of standby at those settings. So I can change it
Right.
in standby mode if the need arises. Then if I want to turn the unit off for real, I'm done with therapy, I need to push the down arrow to make the caret point to power off, and then I have to select off. That would be typically what I would do with nursing. I'm just briefly talk about the controls because they have to do the FiO2. They generally don't do CPAP too much.
Okay.
That would cover it.
And they wouldn't switch from CPAP to flow or flow to CPAP more?
You know, I know, it seems like RT does that.
That's what I was going to say.
I mean, I highlighted to say, look, it's really easy. So if your protocols are that, you know, those are things
But you're not
nursing
going
will
to
change.
stop and run and go get another machine,
Right, you
wait
can-
on RT to do it.
You can do it there. Every hospital is going to be a little bit different.
So the machine is only ever, what the machine is doing is controlling flow, right?
Yes.
Right.
Even though it's in CPAP or flow
Right.
mode, it's still only a flow control. It's just whether or not that flow is variable,
More or less flow to maintain the pressure. Yep.
right? And the flow
And in
is
flow
only,
mode, it's just controlling flow. So you asked for a certain amount of flow, that's what
right?
I'll give you.
I get so.
Yeah.
I can't remember clinically why you would want one over the other, and why wouldn't you always just want to set CPAP?
So what I typically see is, again, because they never knew how much pressure they're generating with flow. The perception is, I'm on CPAP. Flow must be generating less pressure. That must be less assistance to the baby in terms of respiratory support
For weaning,
for weaning.
yeah,
So,
to get them off.
right.
It's just,
Right.
But
yeah.
now, what I said is, you know, before you never really knew, were you going to a lower pressure with the flow? You don't know. So you might have been 3 centimeters of water, then the flow you put on, it could have generated 4 in their nose. You really didn't know. You just knew you changed to a flow bait. Now you at least see what happens.
Now we always know what the pressure
You always know
is.
what the pressure is of the baby. So you can tell, did that flow that I chose actually result in less pressure?
Yeah,
So you know what's going on.
and that's versus the iFlow machine.
Right.
So
It just displays flow. It doesn't tell you anything about the pressure.
yeah, I mean, from an RT point of view, that's always preferable to know where your patient's at pressure wise, because that's everything.
Right. They all know that.
Yeah.
The other thing, though, one thing you'll get, and this is somewhat of an objection you may have to handle, because again, if you were working with the CPAP or vapotherm system, you set flow.
Okay.
And back to charting, what did they chart? They charted the flow they set. So on the CPAP, they set 8 liters a minute. That yields some pressure that usually the Biomed would make a nomogram that says when you put 8 liters a minute of flow, that is 4.5 centimeters of water pressure. But they would chart the flow. We don't display the flow during CPAP mode because we're constantly varying it. We do display it during flow mode, it's whatever you ask for, it's right. But in CPAP, I could be all over as the leak changes and everything, so what number would I display? It would be constantly varying.
Okay.
They'll say, but my charting says I have to chart flow. You know what, that's what we need to work together with your protocol on, because we're changing it all the time, because really what you asked for was pressure. We're giving you the pressure, we're adapting the flow to keep the pressure where you wanted it. So you may have to think about changing your protocol for charting, that you really want to chart CPAP pressure.
You know, in the Walsh pediatric textbook, they teach that flow correlates with pressure.
Well, it always does. They're interrelated as long as you know what relates them.
And there's a rule of thumb for the range,
Right.
but that's all they can do is give you a range.
Yeah, right. It doesn't mean anything until you know how much resistance is involved.
Your tube size.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like for endotracheal tubes,
Yeah.
ventilators have the tube compensation because they can. They know it's a 2.5 millimeter inside diameter tube,
Right.
and the standard for that tube is that it's always this long.
Right.
You know what the resistance is. So when you dial in your tube compensation,
Right.
you're offsetting it because I know what the resistance of that tube is, how much pressure drop. So yeah, pressure and flow absolutely are related.
Yeah, I don't
But not
mean to
the
go
same
all
for every-
Big Bang Theory on
No,
it.
but I mean,
But
they are, but that's the
Yeah.
challenge is we're changing it all the time, because we
Right.
said, what is it that you actually want? You want pressure.
Right.
We can control flow the whole time to give you the pressure you wanted. If you wanted flow, we can do that too. We'll make sure that in reality, to some degree, we're varying the pressure to control flow. Like if the tubing was partially occluded, we're still going to force 3 liters a minute down it. So we'll use more pressure
To push.
to control the flow at that point. But the issue, people don't think about that as much because they're used to flow going through tubes. They never ask about, well, what do you do to keep the flow always the same? Well, I vary the pressure. I put more driving force behind it if the tube's partially kinked. That being said, if it gets too kinked, we'll give you an occlusion alarm, because we'll say there's something wrong here. We're using too much pressure to get that level of flow. That's what allows us to alarm.
Okay.
So then for the RTs, I would go into those menus about the pressure bands and the alarm settings, the up arrow, down arrow, because they're usually the ones that are going to set those. So that would be my fork in the road. I'd do a little bit with the interface, but I'd say now, okay, you guys are probably going to set these things up, right? And I would go through each of those various menus. And it's you know what, I don't really have a default recommendation for you. That's something you'll probably need to figure out. As you use the unit a little bit, find out like where do your staff feel comfortable with how much leak before they want an alarm. I would generally tell you not to be too sensitive, because you're going to get lots of alarms, and you don't like alarms, right? When the nurses are calling you because the machine's alarming all the time, right? That's who they call, RT, right?
Yeah.
So you want to.
There's so many alarms, you get numb to it.
Well, that's, you can make this thing pretty tolerant,
Right.
because we can compensate for a lot. So you don't need to set them hypersensitive. And so your backup is, right, you have your physiologic monitor. You're monitoring the baby's heart, you're monitoring the side. We're giving you alarms to let you know when something's gone wrong, hopefully head it off before the baby starts decompensating. All right, so we could do an occlusion alarm, high and low pressure, leak, patient disconnect, high and low FiO2,
Inclusion.
occlusion,
Oh, occlusion, okay.
circuit kinked. So typically an occlusion alarm would be on the input side of the baby, right? I blocked it, so I'm not seeing any pressure, but I'm trying like hell to get some flow to go down there. So no flow, no pressure is an occlusion.
Mm-hmm.
If I block the exhalation side, I'm probably gonna get a high pressure, because I'll keep dropping the flow, but I'm still maintaining the pressure. So sometimes the same condition, depending on exactly where it occurs, it might give you
Right.
a different indication for the alarm, because it's trying to make a decision. Do I think I'm blocked on the right? If I block here, I won't get any pressure because the flow never made it there, but I see a high pressure inside the unit. So that looks like I'm an occluded circuit. If I do this, there's air going up out their
Right.
nose. So now I'm getting a high pressure condition because I'm lowering the flow